Hi everybody and welcome to what I believe is going to be the last video of this series, believe it or not. We made it through the Catalan. I'm going to use this video to cover a couple lines which I have not mentioned yet. My problem is I can't really remember what I've mentioned so far and what I haven't, but we're going to start with one I'm pretty sure we haven't covered, and one that is a major line, the move 6 queen to c2. So this is certainly a move we have to be very aware of. It's logical enough defending the pawn on c4, and white's main point is that it's not so easy for black to transpose back into a repertoire. If we try it, d takes c, white goes queen takes c4, and after a6, hoping to transpose after castles b5, white has better moves than castles. One of them is bishop f4, which is a bit inconvenient, attacking the pawn on c7. Another move that bothers me a little is knight to e5, stopping us from playing b5, because all of a sudden this bishop becomes very active. So d takes c4 is not my preferred move. The good news is that queen c2 has a drawback, and that is that white has not yet castled, and black can exploit that by going c5, which typically is not a great idea. For example, after castles c5, it's a theoretical move, but I don't like it much. D takes c5, and white tends to end up with a pleasant little edge. So it tends to not work, but in the position after queen c2 it is a good move. And the main point is that if white goes d takes c5, black goes queen a5 check. This is important, and this is a move one should remember, because yeah, it's the sort of tactical justification that we can get away with the c5. Now white has a choice of moves. The most natural one arguably is knight to c3, when black takes on c4, and it turns out that black has won a pawn because the c5 pawn can't really be defended, so white has to sort of make this pawn sacrifice, and he probably has enough for equality, but never more than that. He will most likely regain his pawn, castles. Now black has a choice. Queen takes c5 is alright, the idea being that after bishop e3, which is typically played, the queen goes to h5, white gets enough compensation after bishop g5, for example, but no more than that. Move I like even better is a move knight to c6, waiting for one move before capturing on c5 and asking white what he wants to do. If he goes bishop e3, now bishop takes c5 is fine for black. So what white typically does instead is go bishop g5, get this bishop out, and try to switch to direct play after queen takes c5, bishop takes f6. Here black once again faces a choice, and both moves are fine, I believe. Gf6 a little more ambitious and more risky. White goes rook fd1, black goes f5, white goes e4, and it's a very complicated position. Black king is a little weak, but at the moment he is a pawn up with the two bishops, so it is certainly a playable position. However, I wouldn't recommend it. It strikes me as a little too risky. I would go bishop takes f6 instead, which is very solid. Now white has nothing better than going knight to e4, trying to either win his pawn back or damaging the black structure. Black should go queen to f5, queen e7 tends to transpose, but queen f5, in my opinion, is a little more direct. Now, yeah, white can't take on c4 yet because b2 would drop, so what they typically do is take here, takes, queen takes c4, and one last key move, e5, planning to free this bishop, put it on e6, and black has a good position. This is a game, I believe, Ironian against Leko, where Leko experienced no problems whatsoever. So knight c3, d takes c4 is fine for black. So are the other moves. One move that is sometimes played is queen to c3, but it is too artificial to be any good. Black goes queen takes c5, c takes d5. Here black has a choice. Knight d5 leads to a roughly equal endgame. I prefer taking with the queen on d5, keeping the queens on the board. The white queen on c3 looks a little silly. And after castles, knight to c6. White doesn't have a good discovered knight attack yet, so they tend to go bishop f4, threatening knight to e5. But after bishop f4, black goes queen to b5. Cute little move, attacking the pawn on e2, and black has a good position. So queen c3 is not to be feared either. That's about it. Knight bd2 is even worse, because then black goes queen takes c5, and the spin of this pawn can prove to be very unpleasant. Black has ideas with b5, or even just developing with knight c6. The white pieces just don't coordinate so well here. So none of this is any problem, and nowadays d takes c5 is not seen very often. The move they tend to play if they go for this queen c2 c5 line is the move castles here. Now black, once again, maybe not once again, but here he shouldn't take on c4 because of queen takes c4, and we get a typical Catalan position where this bishop can become very active. So not to be recommended. Instead, what black should do is take on d4. White goes knight takes d4, and black has a choice. Here I'm very torn what to recommend. The most natural and arguably best move is the move knight to c6, when, yeah, white doesn't have anything but taking on c6, b takes c. Black gets a very compact structure in the center. However, this position is sort of a reverse Grunfeld, and if you see it through the eyes of a Grunfeld player, he would probably be quite happy here with white. That doesn't mean that white is objectively better, but against certain types, I think this position should be avoided because they just be too happy with their good Grunfeld, if that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. So theory is something like rook d1, bishop a6, many other moves here, a5 is possible as well, b3, queen b6. The position is roughly equal. White has some different plans. Bishop b2, hoping to get in knight c3 and knight a4, but knight c3 is typically met with d takes c4, so it's not so easy to get that in. Bishop e3, black can go bishop c5. It all leads to fairly equal positions, and knight c6 is the move one should play if one doesn't want a very sharp position or have to study all that much theory here. The more ambitious try is the move e5, trying to grab the center, bother this knight immediately. The only good move for white is knight to f5, trying to at least gain the two bishops. If white were to go knight f3, knight to c6, black is in very good shape already. So knight to f5, and here black should be consistent, grab more space with d4, which leads to a very unbalanced situation after knight e7, queen e7. It's a very complex position. Black has a center, white has the two bishops, but this bishop doesn't do much, so he often tries to get rid of it in exchange for this knight. And then the question is going to be if the white queenside majority or his chances to occupy some squares in the center prevail, or the black active play and grip on the center. Objectively, as usual, I think it's close to equal. It's a matter of taste if you like this position better or the other one. Main move here is bishop g5, h6, bishop takes, queen takes, knight d2, knight to c6, and we get a complicated situation where white has a wide choice of moves and plans. I'm sorry. Here we are, knight d2, knight c6, a3 is a typical move preparing for b4, which black should stop with a5. And play can heaten up, for example, c5, bishop f5, queen a4, queen a7, rook c1, e4 would be a very good scenario for black when he gets his pawns rolling. But there are other lines. I struggle to explain this position because it's not so much move-by-move direct play, but more, yeah, I don't even know what it's about. More a clash of different structures where both sides have many moves at every juncture. Another line, for example, is c5, bishop f5, queen b3, queen e7, knight to e4, take it, bishop takes, king h8, intending f5, once again with rough equality. White is not forced to go bishop to g5. He can play some other sneaky moves. One of them is b3, tending to go bishop a3, but turns out that black can go knight c6 and then block this bishop with knight to b4, which leads to a good position after queen d2, a5. This bishop doesn't have all that much to do here. In passing, bishop c6 doesn't win material because after bc, bishop a3. Now this pawn can block this diagonal. So b3 doesn't strike me as dangerous. b4 is an interesting move. Trying to gain space on the queen side immediately. The pawn can't be touched because of bishop a3. And white has some ideas with b5 and bishop a3 here. This leads to very complicated play. Best move for black is the move bishop e6, immediately eyeing the c4 pawn, which has been weakened by b4, intending to go rook c8 in many lines. And here all hell can break loose if white, for example, goes f4. We have a hugely complicated situation. Black has a choice of moves here. Computer gives moves like rook d8, which are way over my head. I believe humanly one should take on f4, and after rook takes, now go rook d8, when it seems to me like black is in decent shape. Now b4 is under attack. Black develops quickly. White king has been weakened a little bit, but it's very irrational, sharp positions. You have a choice after knight takes d4 between knight c6, solid, and e5, highly complicated, very ambitious. Both moves are playable. I'll leave this one up to you. I'd be probably fine playing both, depending on my mood, my opponent, all those things. That was the last remaining big move we haven't seen, so now we're moving on to smaller ones. Knight c3 we're familiar with, castles we're familiar with, and the other moves that can be played here aren't very frightening. b3, for example, is a semi-logical move, covering this pawn on c4, preparing to fianchetto the bishop. Black has a bunch of good replies. I do like the most direct one, dc4, bc4 and c5, trying to damage the white structure by going cd4. White can't really stop that. Well, he can with e3, but it's a serious concession to play e3. Black would go queen c7, once again keeping an eye on this pawn. White covers that with knight b2, he goes b6. This is a great position for black, very easy to play. Bishop b7, knight d7, put the rooks in the middle, and I'd take black any day of the week here. More typical move for these situations is to castle, allow c takes d, knight takes d4, and here hope that this very strong bishop and potential play on the b file are to white's advantage. But in this particular situation, I think black is alright after queen b6, intending to go rook to d8, and I haven't found anything that bothered me at all with black, so I can recommend this with a semi-clear conscience as well. b3, however, is a move you're never going to face. It's not a very good move, and black has other options like b6, for example, which also shouldn't cause any problems. One last way to defend the pawn is knight bd2. Very natural move, but the knight is often misplaced on d2 and might regret not being on c3, where it very much wants to be in many, many lines. We should not take on c4, that would justify this knight move, but instead, after knight bd2, black should play more slowly and say, okay, you put your knight on d2, congratulations, I'll switch plans, and go b6, followed by bishop b7, knight bd7, c5, take it from there. Here, if white goes c takes d5, then black can and should go e takes d5. This structure is one I'm normally not very fond of after we play b6, but with the knight on d2, this just, is not very good for white. In fact, the computer in many lines gives knight to b1, intending knight to c3. This knight's just misplaced, so this is a good position for black. If white doesn't take, goes something like castles, bishop b7, let's say b3, knight bd7, bishop b2, c5. We do get an equal position. In these situations after cd5, ed5 is still possible with complicated play, but here black also has the option of going bishop takes d5 once again, using this bishop on the long diagonal to neutralize the white Catalan bishop, and the position is at least equal. Well, it's no better than equal, it's equal. So knight b2 is not a bad move, but it's not very threatening either. Then castles, of course. I should mention one more move. This is more a general rule, doesn't matter if in this situation or a move earlier or two moves earlier. C takes d5 tends to be not a good move in these positions because it's not very kind to the bishop on g2. In the structure of e takes d5, the bishop on g2 has nothing to do. Black has pretty easy play, going c6, then getting his bishop out or getting his knight out, going rook e8. These positions are just easy to play with black and should never be feared. For example, something like castle, c6, knight c3. Black has a bunch of choices. Knight d7 is fine, knight bd7 is fine, but the direct move bishop f5 is also fine. Black now could get in h6 and keep his bishop on the diagonal. I'd already prefer black, so the only critical move is knight to h4, and this bishop goes back to e6. And once again, I couldn't find anything that bothered me from the black perspective. Queen c2 is logical, keeping an eye on this square. Now if we want to be very sophisticated, we can go queen c8, stopping knight f5, and playing bishop h3 in some lines. C takes d5 is just not a very good move and should never be feared. That's all I'm trying to say. The move that should be feared, and we've spent a lot of time on this, is castles, d takes c4. Here, as I said, I have some memory issues. I can't remember if I already spoke about knight a3 in this position. It's not a very good move. Bishop takes a3, b takes a, and here the one move black has to know is that you go bishop d7 once again, trying to put your bishop to c6. If I'm repeating myself here, apologies. Knight e5, bishop c6. This is a theme that should by now be familiar. We're happy accepting these triple pawns to develop our queen side. if white ignores that, as they typically do with bishop b2, black goes knight d5, puts his knight on b6, is a pawn up, and the white bishop pair gives some compensation for it, but never more than that. Yeah, this video format, I'm not sure it allows me, and I think we've gone into a lot of detail to cover every single sideline there is out there. If there's something important I've missed in this series, keep your letters of complaint coming to, I don't know, support@chess24.com, and we'll see if we're gonna add it later. I believe we are well equipped, or at least I feel well equipped, to face the Catalan with confidence. I'm aware these lines aren't always very exciting and there's not a lot of kingside attacks going against the white king. But that's the problem. The Catalan is a good opening, and as a part of this very solid d4 repertoire which I'm trying to put together, I did come to the conclusion that the move bishop e7 is the way to go and gives us the best shot at equality. I think in most of the main lines I did find equality, or at least positions I'm comfortable with. So I can recommend it. However, it does happen that you're facing an opponent who is notorious for playing one of the very drawish lines and you really want to or need to win that games. Then yeah, either go d takes c4 or bishop b4 check, or play something entirely different, which is outside of the scope of this repertoire. But there are moves like c5 or 2g6 or crazy stuff like that. Anyway, we've made it through the Catalan. I want to thank you guys for making it until. I hope you did learn something, even if it's only, I don't like this repertoire at all. I'm going to start playing the Catalan with white every game. You did pick up something in the next chapter of this series, because this is a series I'm trying to give you a complete repertoire against 1 d4, knight f3 and c4. We're going to be dealing with knight c3, and then later down the line we're going to be looking at what happens if white starts the game with knight c3 instead of knight f3, which yeah, gives us a new set of problems. One thing I also haven't covered in this series, but I will cover at some point, are move orders, and that's where our Catalan once again becomes important, because the position we've been looking at can't only be reached via that, but it can also be reached via something like this, for example. And all of a sudden, we're back in Catalan territory. There's some other options here like b3 and whatnot, but none of those are all that scary, and they will be addressed in the latest part, which is the last part, which is going to be a dumping ground for all the silly sidelines and flank openings. So thank you for watching this one. I hope you learned something. I certainly did, and I'll see you in the next part or anywhere on Chess24. Until then, bye-bye.